A year after the release of Marvel's Avengers, Square Enix has released yet another Marvel title, this time following everybody's favorite 90s addicted space pirates, the Guardians of the Galaxy, in what was a rather surprise hit. I'm Matt Move the Joystick, and this is my review of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, before we get too deep into this review, I do want to let you guys know that the footage that you're seeing was played on a PlayStation 5. Also, it is from early on in the game. There are a little bit of parts from the middle parts of the game, but there's no captions, so you're not going to really have much context as to what's going on. And I avoided any actual spoiler cinematics, just so that way you could go into this game pretty much blind, because this is a linear narrative-based story, and this story itself is actually only 16 chapters, where it could take you anywhere between 12 to 16 hours to complete. For me, it took me about 13-ish hours, but it was a really fun ride. Now, in talking about the story itself, this story actually, it's gonna really confuse a lot of people, because people going into this game may think that it is about, the MCU's Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's really not. This game actually follows more of the comic book origins of the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. So it's a bit strange. It's gonna go a bit weird for anybody who's going into this game thinking that you're getting the normal Star-Lord, Gamora, Rocket, all of their backstory that you experience from the movies, which that's not the case here. Now, the story itself actually follows the Guardians. They've already come together, and they're running around the galaxy trying to get money, just doing different odd jobs around the galaxy. They find themselves at a quarantine zone trying to find a rare beast for Lady Hellbender. Only it doesn't go quite as well as they might have hoped, because the Nova Corps find them, and, well, they fine them, which caused them to need to get 8,000 units to pay off their debt. Now, this makes them have to go to Lady Hellbender now in order to con her into getting enough money to pay off their debts, and ultimately free the Milano from the grasp of the Nova Corps. Now, as you might guess, that also doesn't go as well as maybe they had hoped as well. So, it's the normal Guardians of the Galaxy, where anything that can go wrong does go wrong. But meanwhile, there's an even more nefarious situation that drives the whole rest of the story. And again, I'm not going to get too far into it, but I will let you know that it is about this cult that is spreading across the whole galaxy. But I'll let you experience the rest of that for yourself. I was really surprised by Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Going into it, I didn't really have much of an expectation for the game itself. I didn't really expect the story to pull me in as much as it did. It was just really enriching, and it really made me get to know and understand the characters more and see different sides of them that maybe we didn't experience in the MCU. So I really enjoyed it for that aspect, and I enjoyed that there was a lot of unpredictable moments. There were so many moments that I thought the game was over, but then it wasn't. It was just, it was moving on to a more exciting and different moment in the game. At times, though, it did feel like maybe this game was a sequel, because it is based off of the comics. So it kind of hopes that you were a comic book reader at times, because it mentions and it talks about things that we've never experienced before in another game or even in the MCU itself. So you kind of have to have a previous understanding of what happened in the comics to have a better understanding of what's going on now in the game. I really like what Square Enix did with this version of the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy characters, because again, these are not the MCU characters. These are the characters from the comic books. And so they've dealt with a whole lot of other trauma, a whole lot of other difficult situations that we have to unwrap as we are playing throughout this game. So it's like a new side of the characters that we never got to experience in the original or the MCU version of these characters. And each one of them, they contribute to hilarious and just so many meaningful moments. I mean, I will say that Star-Lord was a bit sanctimonious at times, like too much, but he did get better throughout the game. But every character goes through like all this character development. They face their fears, they fight injustices, and they get over a lot of issues that they were dealing with in the comic books. Now, a big part of the game has to do with choice. The game allows you to pick one of two options for dialogue choice, and based on what you pick will either strengthen or weaken your bond with particular characters. And this will come into play later on with different events, like if you were able to convince someone, or if you were able to, do something better for someone, then they might help you later on in the game, which might make the situation even more exciting or even more difficult if you didn't help them. A few times these situations did have those meaningful impacts, but there were a lot of those moments that I did just feel like the choices were just unnecessary. Okay, now so let's talk about gameplay. So the gameplay in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is rather different compared to other games because you are playing solely as Star-Lord. So for the most part, you're mostly controlling his combat mechanics, but you are also able to lead your team and tell them when to perform different abilities on particular enemies. The more abilities that you unlock, the better your gameplay style becomes, because you get different area of effect abilities, you get more like high powered, high damage abilities, and it really becomes a lot of fun once you get more of those different and unique abilities, especially the elemental abilities that Star-Lord gets later on in the game. I did feel like at times it was a little like these abilities came a little too late, but whenever you got them, man, it made the whole game so much more fun and addicting. What was also really cool was that you could perform group attacks and finishing maneuvers. So you could be meleeing with a guy and in comes Drax here with an uppercut or something like that, or a drop kick, or Groot will just entangle them and throw them away, or Gamora will just slice them down. I really liked the group effort of the whole game and the whole feeling of this team uniting throughout. Now, what I wasn't a fan of was the actual combat controls. I thought the whole mapping, the default mapping, was very convoluted. Because let's say, for instance, you're using L3 to use Star-Lord abilities while also using L1 to perform team abilities, and firing elemental shots with R1 on top of normal shots with R2, all while holding L2 to lock. And it was just all very convoluted, very confusing. And at times, I would even accidentally open up the huddle ability, which is like a special ability that like refills everybody's health gauges and their abilities. So it became very frustrating whenever I would unlock that or I would start that and I didn't need to, and then I would waste a huddle ability. I think what would make it better is if they got rid of the scan button on R3 and instead they made R3 the lock button, which would then like stay locked on a target the whole time instead of having to hold L2 the whole time. Either way, I just didn't think that the combat mechanics or the combat buttons were used to their best and full capacity. I also think it would have been better if they allowed players to switch to different characters in battle. Like, yeah, you could be Star-Lord all the time outside of battle, but in battle, I think it would have been a more unique and better experience if you could have played as the other Guardians. Now, granted, I think that might have put them into development hell, but I do think that maybe they delay it, they push it back to add that, and yeah, you would have had an even better combat experience. Finally, one of the best parts of Guardians of the Galaxy is something that I cannot show or have you listen to, because it does have to do with the music, and if I showed or if I had you listen to it, then I would definitely get hit with a copyright claim, and I would like to avoid that. But it's got all of your favorite 90s amazing hits. About like 40 incredible songs for players to listen to as they fly around the world and just attack different things. I do think it would have been better though if you could have turned on the Walkman at all times. Unfortunately, they don't give you that option unless you are in the Milano itself, and so that was a bit of an issue for me. But they did have that huddle function that I talked about before that does allow you to unlock a song to play as you are fighting, so that was a cool little bit. Overall, Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy had a few hiccups and a few missteps and some bugs. Those bugs I think will get cleaned up when the game releases, but it did feel a little held back by all of those things. But that said, it does have an awesome story. It's got hilarious moment, impactful combat, and it does leave you with a better understanding of Marvel's greatest ragtag band of space pirates. The game itself isn't very long. As I said, it's only about 12 to 15 hours, but the story makes you eager to learn more, and the combat makes you want to come back and actually jump into combat situations. It is really cool. But that said, this game is a very linear game. There are no side quests. There's plenty of exploration, but it's not an open world. The biggest thing that you can do in exploration is find different outfits. But even that, I mean, that only can last for so long. I love linear games, and I actually did really enjoy this one because I think a lot of linear games are refreshing. Because nowadays we're in a time where everything has to be open world and everything has to have side quests. So it's really cool to be able to experience just a very linear narrative-based story like Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, do I think that it is worth the $60? I think that's going to depend on how big of a fan you are. I think if you're a big Marvel fan, if you're a big Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy fan, yeah, for sure. I think you'll enjoy this experience, and the $60 will feel worth it. But if you're not, and you're looking for just a new and fun game to play, I don't think the $60 is going to be worth it. And I do feel like it'll be a better game to experience at a more discounted price. And that's it. That's my review of Guardians of the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, or maybe any questions that you may have before you buy it. I'm Matt, Move the Joystick. Thank you so much for watching.